February 7th, 1984. A date etched into the history of human exploration. The image is iconic. Astronaut Bruce McCandless II, floating entirely untethered in the vast, crushing silence of space. He is 300 feet away from the Space Shuttle Challenger. No cords, no umbilical. Just a man, a nitrogen propulsion pack, and the infinite void. When we look at that photograph, we feel a sense of triumph. Represents the pinnacle of human engineering, bravery, and control. It is the ultimate proof that we have conquered the heavens. But look closer. Look past the white suit reflecting the harsh sunlight. Look into the blackness behind him. That darkness is not empty. It is a graveyard. While McCandless floated freely and returned safely to the warmth of the cabin, whispers from the other side of the Iron Curtain suggest that not everyone was so lucky. For decades, a shadow history has existed alongside the official narrative of the space race. A history written not in ticker tape parades and medals, but in static-filled radio transmissions, redacted Soviet files, and the terrifying final moments of men and women who drifted away into the dark, never to be seen again. History tells us Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space. History tells us Valentina Tereshkova was the first woman. But history is written by the victors, and in the Cold War, the truth was often the first casualty. Tonight we open the files on the phantom cosmonauts. We listen to the recordings that the Soviet Union tried to erase. We look into the void, and we hear it scream back. Chapter 1. The Tower at Torre Bert. To understand the silence of the dead, we must first travel to the outskirts of Turin, Italy, the late 1950s. While the superpowers were posturing with intercontinental ballistic missiles and threatening mutual assured destruction, two young brothers were quietly building something extraordinary. Achille and Giovanni Battista Giudica Cordiglia were amateur radio operators. But to call them amateurs is a drastic understatement. Using scavenged military surplus equipment, scrap metal, and sheer genius, they constructed a listening station at Torre Bert, capable of intercepting telemetric data and voice communications from both American and Soviet spacecraft. They were not spies, they were simply listening, and what they heard would haunt the world for half a century. The Soviets were masters of propaganda. A mission was only announced after it was a success. If a rocket exploded on the launch pad, it never happened. If a cosmonaut died in orbit, they were airbrushed out of official photographs, their names scrubbed from the records. But radio waves do not lie. Radio waves do not care about politics. Once a signal leaves the atmosphere, it travels forever. In the late 50s and early 60s, the brothers at Torre Bert began picking up signals that did not match any official launch schedules. They intercepted heartbeats. Deep, rapid, terrified heartbeats of human beings in orbit, days before any official announcement of a manned launch. They heard labored breathing, they heard encoded messages, and most chilling of all, they heard the dying cries of those who were realizing that they were not coming home. Chapter 2. The First Casualty. May 1960. 1 year before Yuri Gagarin would officially become the first man in space. The space race is at its fever pitch. The pressure on the Soviet program to beat the Americans is insurmountable. Safety is secondary to speed. At Torre Bert, the brothers intercept a signal that freezes their blood. It is a manned craft. The telemetry indicates it is in orbit. But something is wrong. The craft is unstable. The report from the brothers suggests that the capsule has gone off course. The retro rockets, designed to bring the ship back into the atmosphere, have failed. Instead of decelerating, the craft is drifting further out. The voice on the recording is calm at first, then increasingly desperate. It is a report of systems failing one by one. Oxygen levels critical, temperature dropping. Then, silence. The Soviets officially claim this was a test of an unmanned pressurized cabin. They claim the voice loops were pre-recorded tapes used to test the radio equipment, a convenient explanation. But forensic audio analysis conducted years later suggests the stress in the voice was genuine. The fear was real. If this recording is authentic, then the first man in space was not a hero who returned to a parade. He was a prisoner in a metal tin, slowly suffocating as he drifted into deep space, becoming the first permanent satellite of Earth. A frozen tomb orbiting the planet to this day. Chapter 3. The SOS to the Whole World, November 28, 1960. Another signal reaches the antenna at Torre Bert. This one is different. It is not a voice. It is Morse code, the universal signal for distress. SOS. The signal is weak, fading in and out as the craft rotates. The brothers triangulate the position. It is leaving Earth's orbit. The velocity is too high. The trajectory is wrong. Whoever is inside that capsule is moving away from the planet. The Morse code continues for hours. It's SOS. The tapping becomes slower, weaker. Imagine the psychological horror. You are sitting in a cramped capsule, looking out the viewport as the Earth gets smaller and smaller. You know that the physics are undeniable. You are not turning around. You tap out a message to a world that cannot hear you. Or worse, a world that has been ordered to ignore you. The Soviet High Command would never admit to losing a pilot in deep space. It would be an admission of failure. It would show weakness. So they simply turn off the receiver. They let the static take over. The signal from the drifting craft eventually stopped. Did the batteries die? Did the cosmonaut lose consciousness? Or did they simply drift out of range, carrying their desperate plea into the interstellar void? We will never know their name. We will never find their body. They are the ultimate missing person, lost in a wilderness with no boundaries. Chapter 4. The gruesome end of Vladimir Komarov. While the stories of the drift are terrifying, the stories of the return are gruesome. Not all lost cosmonauts stayed in space. Some came back, but at a terrible price. We must discuss the case of Vladimir Komarov and the Soyuz 1 disaster. This is one of the few instances where the horror was partially public, though the full, grotesque details remained hidden for years. The 50th anniversary of the Communist Revolution is approaching. The Kremlin demands a spectacular space achievement. They want to launch Soyuz 1 with Komarov, then launch Soyuz 2 the next day, dock them in space, and exchange crew members. It is a suicide mission. Everyone knows the Soyuz craft is not ready. There are over 200 known structural defects. Komarov knows he will die. His backup pilot is Yuri Gagarin, the national hero. Komarov refuses to back down because he knows if he refuses, they will send Gagarin, and Gagarin will die. He chooses to sacrifice himself to save his friend. The launch goes ahead. Immediately, the solar panels fail to deploy. The craft is starved of power. Navigation fails. The thermal control system malfunctions. Komarov is spinning wildly in orbit. The American listening stations in Turkey intercept his final communications. This is not the stoic, brave language of a movie hero. This is a man in the grip of primal rage. He is reportedly screaming at the flight controllers, cursing the people who put him in a botched spaceship. He knows the end is coming. The re-entry capsule's parachutes fail. The main chute does not open. The reserve chute gets tangled. Soyuz 1 hits the ground at full terminal velocity. It hits with the force of a meteorite. The impact flattens the capsule instantly. But the horror does not end there. The retro rockets, designed to fire before landing, explode upon impact, igniting the wreckage. When the recovery team arrives, they find a burning lump of metal. The remains of Vladimir Komarov, a charred, shapeless mass, are displayed in an open casket at his funeral. It is a message, a dark reminder of the cost of ambition. But while Komarov's death is recorded, how many others burned up on re-entry? Their ashes scattered in the upper atmosphere, classified as unmanned test failures. Chapter 5. The woman in the tower of all the signals intercepted by the Giudica Cordiglia brothers at Torre Bert. One stands out as the most harrowing. It is the recording that keeps researchers awake at night. It is the recording that, if authentic, rewrites the entire history of space exploration. May 1961. Just weeks after Yuri Gagarin returned to Earth as a global icon, the brothers pick up a transmission on a Soviet frequency. This time, the voice is female. This is crucial because, officially, the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova, would not fly until 2 years later, in 1963. The voice is speaking Russian. She sounds confused at first, then increasingly terrified. She is trying to communicate with mission control. The translation of her words paints a picture of a nightmare unfolding in real time. Listen, listen, come in, talk to me. I am hot, I am hot. What, 45? What, 50? Yes, yes. Breathing, breathing. Oxygen, oxygen. I am hot. Isn't this dangerous? It's all, isn't this dangerous? The brothers listen in horror as the telemetry indicates the craft is re-entering the atmosphere. But something is wrong. The heat shielding has failed. The capsule is not deflecting the heat. It is absorbing it. The cosmonaut is burning alive. Her voice rises in panic. Transmission begins now. 41. This way. Yes. I feel hot. I feel hot. It's hot. I see a flame. I see a flame. I see a flame. 32. 32. 41. Am I going to crash? Yes. Yes. I feel hot. I feel hot. I will re-enter. The transmission ends in a flurry of noise, static, and then absolute silence. The Soviets denied any launch took place on that day. There was no funeral, no announcement, just a radio signal that vanished into the ether. Was this an unknown female cosmonaut sent up in a desperate bid to double the Soviet triumph only to be incinerated upon return? Or was it a test simulation gone wrong? The pain in that voice suggests it was no simulation. It was the sound of a human being realizing that the fire outside the window was coming inside. Chapter 6. The Vanishing Men. Evidence of the lost cosmonauts is not just auditory, it is visual. During the Stalinist era, the Soviet Union became masters of photo manipulation. Enemies of the state were airbrushed out of pictures, removed from history as if they never existed. This practice extended into the space race. We have photographs of the first cosmonaut training group, the Sochi 6. In early photos, there are men standing proudly next to Gagarin and Titov. In later versions of the same photo, those men are gone. replaced by a bush or simply erased, leaving an awkward gap in the lineup. One such man was Grigory Nelyubov. He was a brilliant pilot, considered one of the best. He was Gagarin's second backup. But Nelyubov was a rebel. After a drunken altercation with military police, he was dismissed from the program. But you do not simply fire a man who knows the state's deepest secrets. You erase him. Nelyubov was sent to Siberia. He fell into depression and eventually stepped in front of a train. His name did not appear in the official history of the Soviet space program until the late 1980s. Then there is Valentin Bondarenko, the youngest of the first group of cosmonauts. During a routine isolation test in a pure oxygen chamber, he dropped an alcohol-soaked cotton swab onto a hot plate. In the pure oxygen environment, the fire was instantaneous and catastrophic. Bondarenko suffered third-degree burns over 90% of his body. The doctors could only find a patch of skin on the sole of his foot to insert an IV line. He whispered, "It's my fault. Don't blame anyone else," before dying. The Soviet government covered it up. They airbrushed him out of photos. It wasn't until 1986 that his existence was admitted. If they could hide the gruesome death of a man on the ground for 25 years, is it so hard to believe they could hide the death of a man or a woman in the sky? Chapter 7. The Ghosts of the Void. Skeptics argue that the Americans would have tracked any launch. They argue that the sheer logistics of a space launch are impossible to hide. And perhaps they are right. Perhaps some of the Torre Bert recordings are misinterpretations or unmanned satellites broadcasting telemetric data that sounded like heartbeats. But the doubt remains. The Cold War was a hall of mirrors. Deception was the currency of the realm. We know for a fact that the Soviets lied about the Gagarin landing. He ejected from his capsule and parachuted down. He did not land inside it as the records claimed for years. If they lied about the success, what did they do with the failures? There is a theory that space is not empty, that around our planet, in a decaying orbit, drift the metallic coffins of the pioneers who didn't make the headlines. They are the unknown soldiers of the final frontier. Perhaps on a quiet night, if you tune a radio to the right frequency, between the static of the cosmic background radiation, you might hear something. A faint tapping of Morse code, a labored breath, a final plea for help from a ghost that has been circling the world for 60 years, waiting for someone to acknowledge that they existed. Outro. When we look up at the night sky, we see stars. We see beauty. We see the future. But the void is indifferent to human ambition. It is cold, it is dark, and it is terribly silent. The next time you see footage of a rocket breaking the atmosphere, remember the ones who went up and never came down. Remember the screams from the void. Because while history remembers the names of the heroes, the darkness remembers the names of the lost. This is the Obsidian Archives. Information is a weapon. Use it wisely.